Put it on Front Street. Welcome to Put It on Front Street. Hey, I'm from Pittsburgh, from the pits to the bird.
So, I want you to imagine waking up on your 21st birthday.
Okay.
You know, you're expecting some texts, maybe dealing with a bit of a hangover, but instead you discover that your home state, like the entire state you live in, is being walled off by the military.
Just completely sealed shut.
Exactly. They're turning it into this massive, lawless, self-governing mega prison. And the absolute ticker here, you find out your own father, the politician you trusted, actually helped build the wall.
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's a terrifying scenario.
Right. That is the exact nightmare Claire Falcon wakes up to in the Project Clean Sweep files. And welcome to today's deep dive, because we are unpacking this sprawling, epic storyline.
Yeah.
It exposes a really dark blueprint for, corporate-owned justice.
It really does. The sheer scale of the premise we get in these sources is just, it's staggering. But what's most fascinating to me is the logistical coldness of it all.
Totally. It's so calculated.
Right. The president hasn't just ordered a mass incarceration. They've enacted a plan to relocate 1 million convicted criminals specifically into Texas.
1 million. Just overnight.
Yeah, and they are sealing the borders with reinforced concrete, razor wire, and they're extracting all federal personnel. So no guards inside the perimeter. None.
Arguably the most massive geopolitical shift in American history. We're looking at a crazy scenario where the boundaries between corporate power, the penal system, and actual geographical statehood are just completely erased.
Just imagine standing in front of a massive concrete wall that stretches all the way to the horizon. Out of nowhere, you hear this chilling corporate mandate blasting over huge speakers to a sea of confused, terrified people. You are approximately 1 million of the nation's most committed criminals. You will govern yourselves, and you will survive on your own terms.
This isn't a city, it's a cage we built ourselves. Avery, Edge, Max, Riddles, the only ones keeping the walls from caving in. Boss Rico and D bought us time, but time runs out fast in the interstate. Victor, the Luke brothers, everyone wants a piece. War starts tonight, no more cages.
They've enacted a plan to relocate 1 million convicted criminals specifically into Texas.
1 million. Just overnight.
Yeah, and they are sealing the borders with reinforced concrete, razor wire, and they're extracting all federal personnel. So no guards inside the perimeter. None. The inmates are left entirely to govern themselves.
It's just a complete withdrawal of state authority. And I want you, the listener, to really put yourself in their shoes for a second. We aren't just talking about, like, a prison riot. We are looking at the sudden overnight collapse of civil society.
Oh, absolutely.
How would you react if the politicians you voted for, the people you trusted with your state's infrastructure, were actually the architects of your own massive privatized cage?
Yeah.
Because Claire Falcon's inciting incident shows exactly how fast that floor can drop out from under someone.
Yeah, her morning starts with just a complete demolition of her reality. She checks her phone and sees an article from an underground journalist, Brenda Lewis, I think.
Right, the one who runs the Crashing News blog.
That's the one. Brenda exposes Claire's father, Senator Jonathan Falcon, as a corrupt operative. And not just mildly corrupt, but making backroom deals to protect actual murderers. It completely dismantles the senator's public image in an instant.
And there isn't, a day or two to sit with that information and hire lawyers. The timeline in the source material accelerates instantly. That very evening, right at Claire's birthday party, the military sweep begins.
It's chaos.
Total chaos.
Right.
One of the senator's armed agents rushes in through the balloons and the music, and the senator just panics. He grabs Claire and her best friend, Jasmine, and they flee in a stolen, 750 horsepower cherry red BMW.
Tearing through the city.
Yeah, tearing through the streets while being hunted by actual military tactical vehicles.
Which brings us to the first major mechanical shift in the narrative, because during this high-speed evasion, Jasmine, who Claire believes is just, her fashion major best friend, suddenly takes control of the situation.
Yes. Okay, let's unpack this. Because I was reading this and thinking, how does a college student know how to outmaneuver a military convoy? It's like finding out your goofy college roommate is actually Jason Bourne.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. But it turns out Jasmine is actually Agent Michaels. She's an operative for a counterintelligence unit that has been monitoring Senator Falcon's corruption for years. They literally embedded her into Claire's life.
A total betrayal of trust for Claire.
Oh, for sure. But here is where the senator's reaction genuinely threw me off. They were running from the military sweep, right? But when they finally get cornered, Senator Falcon deliberately runs toward a military bus operated by this corporate executive named Charlotte Garcia.
He basically abandons them.
Exactly. And my first instinct was, oh, he's surrendering to face a federal trial. But that doesn't make sense if the government is basically dissolving the justice system, right?
Yeah.
Why run to her?
Well, exactly. A federal trial in this new paradigm is just obsolete. The senator understands the underlying architecture of Project Clean Sweep. He knows the government has functionally outsourced the management of this new prison state.
This isn't a city. It's a cage we built ourselves. Avery, Edge, Max, Riddles, the only ones keeping the walls from caving in. Boss Rico and D bought us time, but time runs out fast in the state. Victor, the Luke brothers, everyone wants a piece. War starts tonight. No more cages.
Literally replaces who you were with where the corporation assigns you. The second inmates step off those buses, any past gang affiliations or street loyalties nullified by a computer algorithm. Instead, you're handed a black magnetic ID card. And that card right there, that becomes your new name, your currency, and your physical boundary.
When we really visualize this geographically, we can see exactly how Texas was carved up for highly calculated corporate resource extraction. Look at the breakdown. Sector A, up in the Panhandle, is purely agricultural isolation. Sector H, down in the Piney Woods, offers lumber and dense concealment. And critically, you have Sector C, formerly Austin, serving as the administrative and technological heart. So United Enterprise isn't just storing prisoners, they're actively extracting labor and resources from a completely captive workforce.
Let's get into Part 4, Corporate Overlords and Commanders, the Power Structure.
Here is where we meet a huge player in this game, Avery James. Now, Avery was the undisputed kingpin of the old state prison system. United Enterprise tracks him down and actually offers him a secret pardon. They give Avery this impossible mandate, act as a quote-unquote founding father, and build a wall of order in Sector C, the administrative hub. But Avery? He's definitely got his own agenda. He is secretly plotting his own escape and planning revenge against the guy who framed him. Avery knows that chaos always favors the prepared, so he immediately builds a highly structured coalition. He's not doing this alone. He pulls in his trusted enforcer, Edge Castor. He recruits Ben for military-grade tactical security, Max for tech and intelligence, and Riddles to handle syndicate relations. This unified command structure is literally the only thing standing between Sector C and total collapse.
But United Enterprise is not the only player on the board. Enter Project Director Nero. This is a shadowy corporate shell entity, basically a legal ghost, completely off the books. And they are operating inside the walls, funding unsanctioned, high-risk mercenary extractions. They deploy elite hit squads called the Silent Hand. They aren't trying to govern, they're there to steal highly classified corporate assets right out from under United Enterprise's nose.
And that leads us to our final segment, Part 5, the hunt for the asset, the ticking clock.
Meet the main target, Claire Woods, designated by Nero as Asset Falcon. Now, she's the daughter of the very senator who helped design this nightmare, the exact same man who framed Avery James years ago. Claire is violently ripped from her privileged life, framed for capital murder, and dropped right into the center of this corporate proxy war. Why? Because Nero is convinced she holds her father's digital vault key, known as the Hub Schematics. You can really trace her terrifying descent through the different sectors. First, she gets forcibly assigned to an isolated house in the piney woods of Sector H. Almost immediately, Nero's heavily armed Silent Hand mercenaries assault her location. But Avery James, who absolutely needs her as leverage against her father, swoops in and intercepts the hit squad. After extracting her to Sector C, he realizes she is way too hot to hold there, so Avery is forced to smuggle her deep underground. This is where the actual physical architecture of the state becomes a weapon for the people who know how to navigate its shadows. To move Claire without being tracked by drones or rival gangs, Avery uses something called the Old Corporate Run. It's this massive, pitch-black, forgotten logistics tunnel built by United Enterprise, and it allows them to bypass the hostile surface sectors entirely. They eventually surface in Sector G, handing Claire over to the protection of Casey Monroe and her elite, all-female security force at the Vigilance. But here's the heartbreaking part. While Claire finds this temporary underground sanctuary, her best friend, Jasmine, is turned into living collateral. Jasmine is shipped thousands of miles away to the desolate panhandle of Sector A, forced into brutal agricultural labor, basically just to make sure Claire stays in line. Meanwhile, back in Austin, Avery broadcasts a massive warning across the prison state. He declares, "The governance of Sector C is secure. The minute the crazy gets too crazy, I will end it." He's establishing an ironclad rule over his territory, promising peace if you comply and lethal force if you don't. He's setting the stage for an inevitable collision between all these factions, basically declaring himself a king on a board completely filled with corporate assassins.
So, what does this all mean for the future? With Jasmine trapped in the desolate Panhandle and Nero aggressively closing in on those hub schematics, who will ultimately survive the collapse of the prison state? When the corporate overlords finally clash with the proxy commanders they themselves created, who is really going to control the board? Will Avery James manage to break this system from the inside out, or will the invisible hands of United Enterprise and Nero just bury them all behind the very walls they built?
And we really need to look closely at where they send her to. She is assigned to Sector H, which is an area known as the Piney Woods, and her job designation is listed as Natural Resources Management.
Which, I mean, that sounds like a fancy bureaucratic title for a park ranger. What does that actually mean inside a walled-off Texas?
It means brutal manual extraction of raw materials.
Yikes.
Yeah. You have 1 million people sealed inside a state without federal supply chains. They need lumber, they need water, they need basic biomass just to keep the internal economy functioning.
So it's forced labor.
Exactly. Natural resources management is just a euphemism for forced labor to sustain the prison's ecosystem. Claire's real-world currency, her wealth, her status, her political connections, it all drops to absolute zero the second she crosses that border.
And that transition of currency is exactly what I wanted to talk about next. Because if Claire represents someone who loses all their capital in this new system, the source material immediately shifts focus to someone who is suddenly incredibly wealthy and the only currency that matters now.
Violence and survival.
Yes, violence, survival, and influence. We meet Avery James. He's a retired prison big dog who has already served 13 years inside, alongside his incredibly lethal cellmate, Edgecaster.
Avery and Castor are basically the inverse of Claire. They are seasoned apex predators in a confined system.
Oh, completely?
And we are introduced to them during this massive riot at Bow State Prison. It's complete anarchy. You've got rival gang leaders like Victor Santiago and inmates throwing toilet paper fireballs. It's just the sheer chaos of a system collapsing.
Which is such a wild visual.
Right. But right in the middle of this riot, Charlotte Garcia, the same United Enterprise suit who took Claire's father, just walks directly into their cell.
Which raises a massive logistical question for me. United Enterprise just convinced the president to drop 1 million criminals into a walled state. If you do that, you get immediate, unprofitable anarchy. A corporation can't mine resources or run logistics if the labor force is constantly burning down the infrastructure.
Right, they need stability to make a profit.
Exactly. So how do they enforce order without any guards?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, they franchise the asylum. Garcia isn't in that cell to punish Avery and Castor. She is there to hire them.
Wait, hire them?
Yeah. United Enterprise recognizes that corporate executives can't just issue orders to hardened gang leaders. They need proxies. So they offer Avery and Castor full pardons, vast resources, and total command over Sector C, the Austin area, to act as founding fathers.
That is insane. It's like dropping 3 betta fish into a single bowl and just betting on who survives to roll the tank.
Yeah.
She's handing the keys of the asylum over to the inmates, but franchising it like a fast food chain.
It's incredibly cynical, yeah.
But I'm looking at Avery's track record here. He survived 13 years by keeping his head down. Why on earth would he accept a highly visible, incredibly dangerous role as a corporate puppet? Did he take this deal just to survive, or because he realized it was the only way to get a vantage point to expose Senator Falcon's corruption?
It's absolutely a dual motivation driving him. He recognizes it's a gilded cage, right?
Yeah.
But the resources of a sector commander give him the infrastructure, the military muscle, and the intelligence network he needs to strike back at that systemic corruption.
So he's playing the long game.
Exactly. He agrees to build their empire so he can dismantle it from the inside.
Wow. Okay, so Avery and Castor head to Austin to set up shop. They walk straight into the mayor's office in City Hall, probably expecting an empty desk. But instead, they find a guy named Riddles, who is supposed to be the commander of Sector B, the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he's just sitting in the leather chair, spinning around, smoking a cigar.
Yeah, and it immediately exposes Garcia's strategy. She didn't just give one pardon, she handed out multiple Founding Father mandates to rival leaders. She engineered this immediate overlap in territory just to test her assets.
She wants them to fight it out.
Right. But Avery and Ridles quickly realized they were being played against each other by Garcia. So instead of fighting, they form a tense but highly pragmatic alliance.
And their first move is fascinating.
Yep.
They don't just start shooting rivals in the streets, they run a recruitment drive.
Using the local media, right?
Yeah. They use the sector's localized media network, which United Enterprise apparently just left intact, to broadcast television ads, hiring former military and police inmates. They were building a private army to establish protective custody zones. But how do protective custody zones actually function economically in a prison? I mean, you can't just ask people nicely to behave.
You monetize safety. By establishing a perimeter with trained ex-military personnel, they create a safe zone for trade, agriculture, and logistics.
Okay.
Inmates surrender a portion of their resources or their labor in exchange for living within that secure perimeter. Avery and Ridles are essentially inventing a rudimentary tax system to fund their private security force. They are nation building from scratch.
But the moment they establish even a shred of stability, here's where it gets really interesting. This ceases to be just a prison survival story about gangs fighting for territory. It evolves into a full-blown corporate proxy war.
It really escalates.
Avery uses his new network to locate Claire Falcon in a medical quarantine and rescues her, knowing she is the ultimate political leverage against her father. But by doing that, he triggers an attack from a totally new entity.
Exactly. Avery's territory is suddenly invaded, but not by Victor Santiago or local gangs. It's a fully funded, highly trained corporate hit squad calling themselves the Silent Hand.
And they have Black Assault helicopters. Like inside the prison state.
Right, swooping right into the prison zone to kidnap Claire. But Avery's tech specialist, a guy named Max Black, manages to trace the hit squad's communications. He discovers they report to a project director, Nia Rowe, operating under a parent company named Blackwood Acquisitions.
So Blackwood Acquisitions is actively fighting United Enterprise. And they are using the prison state, and specifically Avery and Claire, as the physical battleground for their corporate warfare.
Yeah, the inmates are just unaware mercenaries in a boardroom dispute.
It forces a total reevaluation of the power dynamics. The violence inside the walls is merely a symptom of the economic warfare happening in the corporate suites outside the walls.
Which means Avery's physical strength, being a big dog, it doesn't matter against an enemy he can't actually punch.
Right. The helicopter ambush forces Avery, Edge, and Claire into this desperate improvised escape. They crash their armored transport through a weakened concrete wall and plunge into what the sources call the old corporate run. And I was trying to visualize this. Is it just like a giant sewer system?
No, it's much more significant than that. The old corporate run is a forgotten, pitch-black, subterranean logistics network. Before the state was walled off, corporations built these underground transit tunnels to move highly sensitive materials away from public infrastructure.
Oh, wow. So they're completely off the grid down there.
Exactly. Now they serve as the unmonitored veins of the prison state, allowing Avery to move undetected by aerial surveillance.
And while Avery is navigating those dark tunnels, the sources give us a look at what happened to Jasmine Agent Michaels. She didn't manage to secure a sector commander role. She got shipped out to Sector A, the Panhandle.
Yeah, and her trajectory highlights the sheer brutality of the system for those without leverage. She is stripped of her identity, assigned a black plastic card stamped with a snake symbol, and forced into grueling agricultural labor under a local logistics boss named Silas.
It's such a stark contrast. Jasmine was a top-tier counterintelligence spy. She manipulated senators. She drove tactical evasion vehicles. But out in the dust of the Panhandle, none of those skills matter at all. She is just a number-moving cattle to feed the mega-prison.
It really emphasizes how reliant everyone is on the system's infrastructure.
Definitely. But Avery is moving towards something that could actually disrupt that infrastructure. He sets up a secret meeting with Nurse Maya, who operates out of the medical bay, and she hands him a physical electronic token, the digital vault key.
And this raises an important question, right? The introduction of this key is pivotal. In a world where physical force and basic resources dictate survival, digital data might seem useless. But this key accesses a heavily shielded server farm hidden deep beneath the old penitentiary medical storage.
But what's on the servers that makes it so valuable? Because, you can't eat a USB drive and you can't load it into a rifle.
Leverage. Pure leverage. The servers contain Charlotte Garcia's complete unredacted ledger. It holds the undeniable evidence of how Avery was originally framed by Senator Falcon, and, more importantly, it contains the architectural systemic blueprints for the entire prison state.
Every vulnerability.
Yeah, every power grid, every supply route, every corporate backdoor.
So Avery finally has the holy grail of blackmail. He has a private military force, thanks to an alliance he strikes with Casey Monroe's Vigilance Army. He has the finances from the protective custody zones. And now he has the blueprints to the corporate vault.
He has everything he needs.
I'm looking at this from Avery's perspective. If you can't attack the corporation's headquarters directly, how do you hurt them? I imagine you attack their operational stability.
Precisely. You make their investment unprofitable. Avery realizes that simply surviving isn't enough. He has to demonstrate that he can shut down the very infrastructure United Enterprise relies on to make money.
Which leads right into the climax of this storyline. Avery leaves his combined forces to seize a critical hydroelectric dam.
And the dam is a strategic masterstroke. It isn't just about taking territory, it controls the power grid for the entire sector.
Right.
By taking the dam, Avery forces the hand of his internal rivals, which leads to a direct confrontation with Victor Santiago. Avery eliminates Santiago, neutralizing the biggest internal threat to his command, and proves he can control the infrastructure.
So he takes the dam, he takes out Santiago, and you think, okay, this is his moment of triumph. He finally has the upper hand. He gets on a secure phone line with Charlotte Garcia, and I fully expected him to dictate terms to her. But instead, she completely flips the board on him.
Yeah, that phone call is a chilling recalibration of the stakes. Garcia isn't shocked. She isn't angry about the dam or the rival corporate hit squads. She coldly reveals that she knew about Blackwood Acquisitions and project director Nero all along.
Wait, really? She let the black helicopters attack her own prison.
Yes. She allowed the corporate sabotage to happen just to test the resilience of her assets. She tells Avery that the rules haven't changed, the stakes have just gotten higher. He thought he had outsmarted the system, but she reminds him that he is still just a piece on her chessboard.
It is such a massive realization. Avery thought he was playing a localized game of survival against the other inmates, only to realize Garcia is the one designing the board, defining the rules, and constantly moving the goalpost to ensure corporate profitability.
It masterfully illustrates the core theme of the narrative, honestly. That terrifying intersection of privatized justice and unchecked corporate greed.
Absolutely. I mean, the scope of what we just covered today is incredible. We started at a wealthy 21st birthday party in Virginia, analyzed the rapid collapse of a political family, and followed the fallout all the way to a full-blown, militarized corporate proxy war fought by pardoned convicts inside a walled-off Texas.
It's a wild ride.
From navigating subterranean logistics tunnels to weaponizing digital server farms, this material really challenges how we think about infrastructure, power, and currency.
It really does. It forces us to ask very uncomfortable questions about what happens when the mechanisms of state control are handed over to entities driven purely by profit margins.
Definitely. And I really want you, the listener, to think about what stands out to you in this scenario. If you woke up tomorrow and found yourself dropped into Sector C, navigating the sudden shift in what is considered valuable, which faction would you align with? Would you pay the tax to live in Avery's protective custody zones, or would you take your chances out in the agricultural dust with Jasmine?
And as you consider your survival strategy in that scenario, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought about the architecture of this world, sort of mull over on your own. When a government willingly outsources its justice system to a ruthless corporation, and the only people capable of establishing order and protecting the innocent are the convicted criminals themselves, who are the real prisoners and who are the true wardens.
Man, that is a heavy question to chew on, and it really reframes the whole concept of authority. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We highly encourage you to keep exploring this grand narrative, the mechanics of this world, and all its implications on your own. Just remember, the next time you wake up on your birthday, be glad the borders of your state are still open.